Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. With me tonight, as always, my good friend Drew Crawley. Drew, you've
I'm,
already got a drink in your hand, man. We haven't even started.
oh, this is not pour number one of today.
Are you so you're pre-gaming on us?
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Very good, very good. So what have you been into today, sir?
Oh man. Today was the Oppenheimer movie. So
Yeah.
everybody's been hyping up the Oppenheimer and Barbie combo day. We skipped
Hmm.
Barbie because I don't think there's enough THC products in the world to make me enjoy that film. And and then just had some people over. We've been hanging out playing drinking games in the yard. So been a pretty good day and very good week, full of music.
Yep.
Went and saw a show, played a show, spent 2 days up in Nashville in the studio working on stuff for this record. So it's been a really good week.
Fantastic. That's all very good.
Yep.
Yeah, you talk about going to movies, and I don't want to get too far down the movie rabbit trail, but
Sure.
Cindy and I were out of town this weekend, and rather than taking the sights, we said, "You want to just go to a movie?" So
Excellent.
we found this theater in St. Louis. It's called it's a little chain. It's called Alamo Cinema House.
Yes, I've heard about these places.
It was fantastic. The theaters, huge screens. They got the great chairs that can lean back and all that stuff. But they'll come and they'll bring you food at
Mhm.
your seat. We went to an 11:15 showing of the new Mission Impossible movie, and
Outstanding.
I got to drink Wild Turkey 101 in the theater, so it was
All right.
awesome.
Nice.
But one of the cool things is before the movie, they
Mhm.
have this like 30-minute montage of videos that are specially curated for whatever the movie is.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So they had like some old 1940s era movie stunts, and they did some play off on the Mission Impossible stuff and Tom Cruise stuff. It was just really cool. It was a lot of fun.
That's neat. Yeah, it sounds like an awesome experience.
Yeah, of course we'll never get one of those, and I thought we'd never get a Top Golf, and we've got that. So maybe one day we'll get one of these things in Louisville. So it was a lot of fun. Anyway, enough about that. Very few people care about any of that, but because we've got a great guest we need to get to, and we got Neil Johnstone with us, and he is going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into talking with him, we're going to tell you a little bit about the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart Co-op is a collection of friends that produce content for the whiskey enthusiast. We have Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. Distillers Talk is where they will have conversations with the distillers from across the country, around the world, about all things distillation. If you want to know more about what got in that bottle that you've got, this is the show for you. They get into a little bit of everything. A little bit more of everything is another show from Alan called One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, where if you're a distiller, whether illicit or legal, you can email Alan questions about anything from a distilling standpoint, and he'll post YouTube video responses to those questions. Very cool. My Whiskey Den is a show with our friends Pat and Mike and Mitch every Monday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. They are on Craft Whiskey is King at My Whiskey Den. Be sure to check that out and hang out with the good people in the chat. And then just a little bit more about our show.
All right. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification to find out when new episodes come out, which is every Wednesdays on all of your streaming services everywhere. Apple, Spotify, whatever other ones there are, and the YouTube where you can watch the live recording itself.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Mike, as we're recording this, Mike had a birthday yesterday. So
Happy birthday, Mike.
Happy belated birthday, Mike. We will not sing. I'll sing to you next time I see you. How about that? I know you something for you to look forward to. All right. So, Drew, you've become friends with Neil. I look forward to becoming friends with Neil. So, why don't you introduce Neil, get that ball rolling, and then take
Absolutely.
us through this whiskey tasting that you got ready for us?
Sure. So I'll let Neil share a little bit more about what it is that he does, but tremendous guy. Met him through the Monarch group and some mutual friends. Friend of the show, Dusty Bowe, and Scott Smith, and all that group of guys and girls. And just a fantastic songwriter, tremendous picker, and just all around decent guy. So,
hey man,
Neil
thanks.
Johnstone, welcome.
Appreciate that.
Oh, podcast host too.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure.
Yeah, that seems like what I am more than anything these days. But hey, seriously, thank you for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad you could be here. Well, we want to hear more about you and your music and whiskey journey. But before we do that, we should probably start and have a little pour.
Yeah.
So I've given you guys some blind samples. Sample A is what we will start with. And just kind of give that a little nose, give it a little taste. Tell me what you think of it. And maybe if you have any guesses as to what it is.
Oh. And my A is the one without the rubber band, right?
That is correct.
We use at Bourbon Turntable, we use high-tech labeling processes. You should see some of the things that I send over to Drew. Here's a green rubber band. Here's a yellow rubber band. A red rubber.
Yeah. Hey, it works.
Better. Yeah, you can reuse the bottles much easier that way than having to peel off a label.
What do you think of it, Neil?
Man, it's got some spice to it. It's beautiful. It's still lingering. See, on our podcast, we have that's pretty good. That's really good. And that's really, 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 really good. I love this, man. I like something that has a little bit of a bite to it.
Little warmth. Yep.
That warmth that kind of sits there. And man, to be honest with you, I didn't start that way. When we started the podcast a few years ago, I was icing my bourbon type of dude. Didn't love to kind of get the feel of it, but it's changed over the past 3 years, man. That's beautiful.
Awesome. Glad you enjoy it. Kevin?
Yep. That's very good. A good little orange in it. A little citrus in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the classic bourbon notes, some vanilla, maybe some brown sugar.
God, that's good.
Mm-hmm. No, it's lovely.
Good deal.
It's very familiar.
It is, isn't it? It's like a Knob Creek 9-year or something like that. Feels like, I don't know what it is. It's just got a.
Well, you're closer than you may think with that guess, Neil.
All right.
So, anybody want to guess at what it is?
That's as close as I'm getting, man.
Okay. Well, Kevin, I think I texted you what we were going to be having. Just didn't tell you.
I don't know which one. Well, I kind of You told me what we were tasting. You didn't tell me which one was switched.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
I won't cheat.
So for A, we did Old Grandad 114. So that was a bottle that I brought for you and Dusty and I to share the night, and Brent and his girlfriend as well, the night that I did your podcast. Yep. So I figured we'll do a little throwback. I think that's one of the most underrated gems that is on the shelf. If you can pull it in, it's usually somewhere in the neighborhood of $30, and it's just delicious.
No doubt.
No, I agree. It's a favorite. Can't go wrong with it.
Yep. So, Neil, how did you get into bourbon and bourbon consumption?
Well, so for years, I did not like alcohol at all. Beer still is not something that I am particularly fond of, and do not drink. But I think as I was probably mid 30s or early 30s, started doing the little mixing here and there. I was always at that point playing still in bars, and going straight whiskey is not a good idea if you've got a 4-hour set to do things like that. So
Speak for yourself, man.
well,
No, I'm
I'm not a sipper, man. This is 114's going down too good already. So, man, and to be honest with you, my family are bourbon lovers. My parents drink bourbon. They are still just amazingly active and on the move, and they love bourbon. So I mean, it became really more of a family social than anything. It became, we would go. I mean, my parents, yeah, my parents lived 2 houses down from me in the house that I grew up in. My brother lives across the street in a house he built, and then my sister lives 2-3 houses down the other opposite way.
okay.
Towards the studio from where I'm at, Drew.
Yep.
To kind of put it in perspective. And so we don't we didn't have drives, we all have, there's some 4-wheelers up here, so we could just ride a 4-wheeler down there and hang out and have a couple bourbons and ride back home, or I could walk, whatever. So it really became more, if I really break it down and think about it, it became more of a family social hang than anything. And yeah, my brother kind of really dove deep into particular bourbons and finding the 114s and the Buffalo Trace years ago when we were kind of when Jim Beam was the thing, and then I discovered Elmer T. Lee, man, and I became a bourbon fan.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, what was the first one that you kind of fell in love with? Sounds like
that was the one,
that was
dude.
it.
That was the one. I still cry tears to never be able to find that for a decent price.
Yeah. Well, we might know some people. So if you're hunting, there's a group of folks that kind of hunt and collect together, and we can throw you in that group chat if you'd like to be.
Well, here's my problem is I'm not a collector. I'm a drinker. So if I had Elmer T. Lee, it would not last. It would not be something that would sit in my whatever generally is in my cupboard, or I said cupboard like I have a cupboard. whatever's in the drawer is what gets drank.
Sure.
So I would hate to. I think that I might be, if I had 2 bottles, maybe I can make one last for a while. But yeah,
sure. I get it.
Back pre-COVID, Stevie Ray's here in town, they would get in every now and then. They would get in bottles of Elmer T. Lee, and it was like $8 a pour.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And
I think you and I put pretty good hurt on one of those bottles one night.
Yes,
I could imagine you would.
And but after they shut down for COVID, and when they opened back up, they don't get, for whatever reason, they don't get that anymore. So
probably can't find it.
It's quite a shame. But that was always my Elmer T. Lee Rock Hill Farms source, but it is no more.
Oh, no doubt. So I went to Bardstown for one of their street fests where they shut everything down and they got the big stage. And there's a little pizza place, and my wife and I ran in there real quick, and we were like, all right, let's get a drink. And they had Elmer T. Lee, and I said, give me an Elmer T. Lee neat. And she said, are you sure? I was like, uh-oh, how much is it? And she said, $45 before. And I said, oh my like, I used to get it for $28, man.
Right. Right. The bottle at retail is about $45.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's bonkers. We could probably sit and talk about all the wonderful bourbons that we missed that have either priced out or gone the way of the dodo bird.
No doubt.
Sucks.
No doubt.
Sucks. Awesome. Do you remember what your first drink was? Like when you started getting in? Were you sneaking in high school? Or
yeah. I know exactly what my first drink was. I was probably like 13 years old, maybe 14. Panama, Destin, Florida, one of those trips, spring break. I was with my parents, but they weren't, they didn't give me, but I had an older friend that I took with me, and somehow we got Zimas. So it was 100% my first experience with getting alcohol, and it was a Zima. No
outstanding
doubt. Yeah, man.
That might be a first for this show.
Hey, man, I'm gonna be honest with you.
I love it. I love it. So now, you guys do this podcast every week, and you guys often will have a bottle of bourbon around. Is there a bourbon that you've come to know recently that you really like, or anything new that you've tried that's excited you?
Geez. I had some double oak Jefferson Reserve today that was amazing. It was like buttery. It was so good. That it was not on the podcast, but it's the thing that kind of just sticks out in my mind because it was really, really smooth. Double oaked Jefferson Reserve. Thank you, Bryce Wilhite. I appreciate that, brother.
Good guy to know.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
no doubt. No doubt.
I don't think I've had the double oak Jeffersons.
I haven't either. Yeah.
It's excellent. He said he got it for about $100. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was awesome.
Yeah. We know somebody that works there, Drew.
That's true.
So
hey,
it's true.
He can't believe he hadn't set us up yet, but
I know. We'll have to call him and.
Is he really a friend? I mean, come on, man.
Apparently not. Apparently not.
Oh, granddad, man, it's awesome.
Yep.
Now you'd mentioned Drew when Neil guessed Knob Creek that he was close. He is close because of the distillery, but the mash bill for Old Granddad is different than the rest of the Jim Beam bourbon lines.
Right.
It's
I believe the yeast strain is different as well.
I think you may be right. But it's a higher rye mash bill for the Old Granddad.
I'm a fan of rye whiskey. I actually really, really enjoy a good rye.
Excellent. Yep. This one, definitely you can taste that. This one's always reminded me a little bit of like peanut brittle and cinnamon on the finish. And I really love that note a ton in this one.
Yeah. Well, even though it is a different mash bill and maybe a different yeast strain than what Beam uses on their other stuff, I think that nuttiness that's kind of usually attributed towards a Jim Beam product still comes through.
I agree. Yeah, it's got to be something in their process that has that signature note. And I'm not sure what else it would be, but pretty dadgum tasty stuff. So,
yeah, it really is, man.
Cool.
It is good.
Well, I don't want to rush anybody, but are we ready to move to sample B, or do
Yes,
we need
please.
another minute? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead
ready.
and pour that up in the glass and tell me what you think.
That's
I need to switch glasses.
Yeah, that's a smoother. That's a lighter smell for sure. It's definitely not as. I guess. All right, so I'm not good with the notes and what is what. Would this be considered floral of some sort? It feels light.
Let's see. It definitely has much more floral nose than the other one.
Yeah, the other one had a bite. 114 has a little kick to it.
This one, it kind of reminds me of, like cherry blossom. Like where it's like a little bit fruity, a little bit floral kind of together. That's kind of what I'm getting on the nose.
I can actually smell that.
The power of suggestion.
I'm telling you, man.
Give
me something else.
Kevin, what'd you think? Guess I should let you try it first, huh?
Yeah, I love the way it feels in your mouth.
That's really good. It's like a hug. It's like a mouth hug.
Yeah. And a lot of times things that are real floral kind of have a finish that kind of turns me off. That's not the case with this. It's obviously got some age on it, but it's not over oaked. But again, it's a lot of classic bourbon. It's a classic bourbon. Okay, you're getting vanillas and caramels in it.
It's for not what it is. It's got quite a bit
peppery.
going on. Yeah,
does have a pepper. Yep.
Any guesses on this one, Neil, or anything it reminds you of?
I mean, it kind of has a Four Rosy taste.
Yeah. That makes sense with the florals. I get a lot of their stuff, kind of those yeast strains, especially two of them, just scream that to me. But so again, this one is one that I consider kind of an underrated or underappreciated one. And this is a Russell's Reserve single barrel from Evergreen here in town. I've befriended the manager there because it's right by my office, and he was like, "Hey, we've got about 6 more of these. Do you want one?" I said, "Yes, please." So I think he with the discount or whatever, it was like 62 and change. So
That's good.
nothing crazy, but
Yep.
for 110 proof, dadgum, it's drinkable.
That'll hurt
Very
you
drinkable.
at 110
Yeah.
proof because that does not feel or taste like a 110.
Yeah, that's what hurts you. Is that's easy to drink. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
man.
is.
Exactly.
Not necessarily easy to recover from, but it's easy to drink.
Yeah.
Have you ever had Basil Hayden cask strength?
Mm-hmm.
It tastes just like Basil Hayden. I
Yeah.
mean, just barely. I mean, Basil Hayden's an easy one too. So,
Yeah, that would be a either a very quick night or a very long next morning. We're left unsupervised.
Yeah.
100%.
It's almost. I mean, there's a honey note to it. There's a honey feel to it in your mouth, and it's almost like a little bit of a spicy honey, like a pepper honey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a chili pepper or something in there. Not a lot. I mean, it's kind of subtle.
Yeah.
It's not going to overpower you.
This is a very specific reference, but the note that it reminded me of, the sauce that they put on the chicken at the Eagle? It's like their hot honey, the fried chicken restaurant. That's kind of where that skews for me.
It is pretty
interesting.
So we need to sneak in some of this in a flask and go have some fried chicken at the Eagle.
There you go. Well, and you can do that right before you go next door and see a show at the Monarch.
See a show at the Monarch.
There you go. Perfect.
Yes. Well, here's what you do. You just go. You got this little, lawn area there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you just pitch a tent or throw out a table, and you're good.
Absolutely.
You may have to pitch a tent if you finish that bottle. You may have to pitch a tent there over the night.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if you're gonna do that, you might as well make it during Drew's first show at the Monarch, right, Drew?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Coming up. When's the date? What's the date?
The 29th of this month of July. So
right on.
Very excited to get out there and actually play a show. I love that place. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, plenty tonight. But for those in Louisville and the surrounding areas, man, the Monarch is special. Whether you're a musician, a songwriter, just a lover of music, or just a lover of good people and a great way to spend a night out. It's incredible. Mark and his team over there have built something really, really, special. It has felt like a little bit of a hey, there you go. Professional graphics.
Beautiful.
Oh my goodness. So it's just a really special place and almost feels sacred in certain ways of just the people that are there for the right reasons, all paying attention to something important together, and then all of the profit or income from those shows goes directly to supporting musicians. So really, really neat and special place.
This was my first visit to the Monarch. Look, I got to see these people.
Sarah and Dusty, huh?
Yeah, man. Beautiful. Sarah's a songbird, I'm telling you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she was on she'll have I think she has a podcast coming out or just came out with us.
Yeah.
Excellent, man. Yeah. She came in for that show actually, and we went ahead and recorded. But yeah, man, the biggest the thing I always love to say about the Monarch it's I think if people understand that they aren't selling anything. They aren't selling drinks. They aren't selling food. They're not selling a product. They are wanting people to build a community around the love of music. And when when you are on that stage, or if you're a participant in the audience, everybody, like Drew's, it is a common purpose. It is as much participatory on the audience side as it is on the artist side, because of the respect for the space, the silence of that space, and just the fact, I'm serious, man, the fact that there's not a product to sell. They're going to be membership driven, which if there are people on here that would be interested in that, it's not artist only. I don't work for the Monarch. I haven't talked to Mark in probably 6 months. This is just me telling you why I appreciate it, man. When you don't sell something and you're pushing for the art, kudos.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Big deal. No, good.
No,
we could gush about that place a lot.
Yeah,
it's brought a lot of good into my life. So big fan of that spot. Yeah.
Huge.
Cool.
Okay, so I have one more whiskey question. Since we tasted these two, Neil, do you have a favorite between the two?
I got to tell you, man, I really like the 114. I like the Old Granddad a little bit more. I like that little bit of a kick, knowing what I'm getting myself into, I think.
Absolutely. Well, and it just goes to show you too, blind tasting is the truth, because the Granddad is half the price of the Russell's Reserve. A lot of people, at least folks that I've met, think Old Granddad, and they think the 80 proof $9 bottle that they were drinking in college, and they don't know that line has really, really good expressions in it. And there's plenty of good stuff on the bottom shelf under $50. And I'm personally okay that more people don't know about them, because that means more for me. But you don't have to spend $70, $80, $90 to have a good, drinkable, shareable bottle.
Yep.
Old Granddad 114 was on the shelves at Costco for a couple of weeks. $16.99.
Are you? That's crazy.
Did you buy them out?
I didn't buy them out. I did buy a couple.
Nice.
But to me, if it kind of depends on what I'm in the mood for. If I'm wanting to be a little more fancy about it, and let's pair this whiskey with something, then I'll probably lean towards the Russells. Or if it's somebody that hasn't had that they've spent their life drinking, Beam White Label or Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, I'll probably let's try this Russell's Reserve, because it's really complex. But if it's just us guys sitting around talking about music and having a drink, we'll break out that Old Granddad 114, and it'll be a really fun time. And nobody will say, "Well, I wish we had some good whiskey to drink."
No,
because it's fantastic.
It really is. It's interesting. Probably, I'd say 10, 12 years ago, we did, my family and I went on a huge vacation. It was all the grandkids, kids, parents, and everybody brought a bottle. And it was like $50 or below. And we did a blind tasting. I mean, we got hammered because there was like 7 or 8 bottles, and we didn't do baby pours. I don't know. We had a good night. But the Russells ended up winning of all that. So it's interesting to see like the palate, how my palate personally has changed so much in that little in that amount of time.
Yeah. And will continue to change. And we'll one day, I mean, we could sit down tomorrow, which may not be a bad idea. We could sit down tomorrow and drink these again. And have different opinions.
Yeah. You're going to have to send me more Old Granddad 114.
Hey, that is fine. But we looked a little sketchy the other day. I met Neil right in the middle of the workday, and we pulled into a preschool parking lot, and we're handing whiskey samples to each other through the windows.
It's okay, man. I'm a federal employee. It's completely okay.
Wait. You're with the feds. Do we have
Yeah.
a problem here?
I'm just, yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Don't worry, I'm only a mailman.
Well, if you control the mail,
They'll
you
hire anybody.
control
Don't worry.
information.
Right.
Quote Newman.
There you
Yep,
go.
I was gonna say that has to be a Seinfeld
It's a
reference. Yeah.
Seinfeld reference.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. Well, is anything else whiskey related, guys?
Everything's whiskey related, man. I mean,
Sure.
at the end of the day.
I think we've got something really, a couple of really good samples to sip on when we start talking a little bit more about music. But before we start grilling Neil on his music history, we want to give him a chance to tell us all about Top Hill Recording Podcast.
All right, man. Yeah, thank you for doing that little promo. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, the podcast. I guess what I would say is it's there's a lot. When we started, was a lot like this. We had spent a little bit more of our time talking about bourbon, which it's evolved a ton. So we're about 4 years deep. My co-host Brad Weston and I, and man, it started by accident, and it has completely grown into one of the coolest things that I think I've done, because I have had relationships form, great friendships, tremendous artists come through, perspectives gained. It's personally for me, it's been amazing. But yeah, man, it's been awesome to be able to promote starting with the Louisville scene, how amazing Louisville artists are. It blows my mind every time we bring somebody else in that is from here that I've either have heard of in the peripheral, or sometimes never heard of, and they come in, they blow my mind with whatever it is they do. And what I've really learned in the process is that there's so many different and talented ways to artists that express themselves in these amazing forms of song that just, it blows my mind. You don't have to love a certain genre. You don't have to it's been crazy, because like Drew comes in, and I don't think he sang a song that I went, that's okay. Every one of them I was like, God, it's so good. It's so well written. And we just have, you all just had Dusty on. Well, you just had Mojo on a couple weeks ago. I mean, think about this. Think about what's brewing in this area. And I swear to you, after doing it as long as we have, there's something cooking in this area in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yep.
Yeah.
It really is.
And not to jump in on top of us trying to promote your podcast, but one of the just incredibly cool things about doing this with Drew are the people that we've been able to meet along the way. If you told me there's a music festival and the only people on it are the musicians that we've had on this show, take my money.
Yeah. 100%.
Take my money all day long, because it would blow my mind. Of course, probably not going to have somebody on the show that, they kind of suck, right? But
we try not to.
The level of talent that is out there that unfortunately the mass public has never heard of. It's incredible, because there are some people that are just to me, Dusty Bowes and just so fantastic. That album of his just kills. And we've had Sweet Lady on a couple of times. Good grief, those guys are so very talented. And the list goes on and on and on.
It's just such a strange and world and environment that these guys find themselves in. All these musicians,
Mhm.
every one of them. It's how do you really get heard? I mean, how do you get heard in a mass scale? It's and do you is the machine still does that work for people? I wouldn't for the
Mm.
life of me anymore trust my career with a big machine with the Nashville stuff, with the LA stuff. I just feel
Right.
like it can be carved out in a different way now. And I
Mhm.
think that what we're finding is we are like the people that are watching that new evolution form of how do you grind to a career when
Mhm.
when you have that type of talent, because they're you know like you said, I don't know if you all have heard Bedford play before, but it's just there's so many uh people that you all have had and that we've had that I just go, they've
Mhm.
got to make it. For the
Right.
love of music and the art,
Right.
you're too good for people not to hear you.
Right.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. You mentioned Mojo Thunder. Those guys. Good grief. That
They're
uh,
stupid.
Hymns from the Electric Church. That album kills. It
Yeah.
is just incredibly good, and it showcases the musicianship in terms of the instrumentation, the songwriting, the vocals, everything about it. Song
Mhm.
after song after song. Absolutely fantastic. Drew always says, this album, no skips, no misses,
Mm.
and that was absolutely holds to the case, and so does Dusty's.
Mhm.
Um,
Dude,
and
that's the crazy part. You can name it. I'm thinking Luke Powers. I'm thinking like you go the other way, Scott Smith. Ellie Ruth has never done anything that I haven't been like, oh my God, on
Yeah.
any level, on anything that she's done. Uh, I mean, was it Blakely Berger? I mean, she's with a Yap. There's so many that there's you listen to the records or you
Mhm.
listen to whatever, and it's just what?
Right,
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
right,
some of them, like you look at the Spotify spins and it goes under 1,000, and you just go, how is that possible?
right.
Mhm.
What are you people listening to?
What are you listening to? You got, junk that has 80 million plays, and then,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
gems that are hidden.
yeah,
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 it's wild.
yeah, and it works the same way on the whiskey side,
Oh, I could
and
imagine.
you know, everybody's wanting to get a bottle of Pappy or a bottle of Weller, and there are craft distillers out there that are trying to break through that noise, and they're just making an incredible whiskey.
Mhm.
But the bourbon bros are out there. I got to get me some Weller. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with Weller. Or I got
Mhm.
to
Sure.
get some Blantons, and there's nothing wrong with Blantons. But man, there's so much more out there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no doubt.
Yeah.
I've got I'm gonna throw in a little plug for my old buddy Bob. I don't know if y'all have ever had Four Gate whiskey.
Mm.
Hmm?
It is phenomenal, but he's a friend of mine actually. I see him quite, but he always gives me crazy samples, and sometimes you just have that stuff and go, oh my God,
Mhm.
I don't know, why I even talk about it, but it's so good.
Yep.
I
All
don't
right.
know. I
Well,
just thought about
all
that.
right.
Sorry.
I took us off on a tangent
Yes, what
again.
it was. You started talking
Sorry.
about bourbon again, man.
Sorry. So, all right. Top Hill Recording Podcast. Where can folks find it?
Yeah, anywhere, man. Spotify, YouTube. We have just recently, in the last, I'd say 20 or 30 episodes, started full production, video production. So
Awesome.
everything is on YouTube. It's edited, tried to, which is everything's in house. It's Brad and I, and then we have also brought in Brent West, who's a lifelong friend of mine that does switches, does the board, and um, you know, uh, yeah, Spotify. I would say YouTube. I would love for people to go to the YouTube page
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
watch it, throw it on, put it on in the background, whatever.
Yep.
But that's new and it's exciting. So, which has changed the way that we do the podcast. It used to
Mhm.
be kind of the podcast was one thing, and then we did this thing called One Shot, One Mic, One Song, which was a different thing. So we do the podcast, cut recording, and then go into the videos and do, intros and all this stuff. And it was kind of, I don't know, bland or whatever. But now it's all one big thing. All the music comes in from the beginning, and it's been an evolution, like I talked about
Right.
earlier. It's been cool,
Yep.
man. So yeah, check it out on YouTube if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
something-
you're talking to the musicians, they're telling their story, they're telling not just stories about their songs, about the music they're writing, but they're telling stories about their lives. And then they're playing some of their songs during the show as well, right?
Oh yeah. So we
Yeah.
generally will start with the song, and then we'll do the intro. Hey, Top Hill, recording, blah blah blah, and introduce our guest. They will play a
Right.
song immediately. And our whole concept was we're all in the same room, so we're sitting in the same room in our small little studio with either a 7-piece band or a solo artist. It doesn't matter. We squeeze you in there, and it becomes either really hot or really, really, really hot. Just depending on how many people. There's no cool. There's nothing in between. So,
Yeah.
the whole concept was we want you to hear what we're hearing. So there's
Yeah.
one microphone in the room. There will be maybe, the bass player will run to a bass amp, but they don't run to a board. They run to the bass amp in the room.
Right.
Everything goes through that thing. So I think it's a pretty cool concept that kind of gives people a more of a feel for what's happening in that room, because that's one thing that is hard to translate with music is how do you bring what happens in a show into your ears when it's just you, and that's how
Right.
it did start. It was so I think that was kind of our way of doing it. Look, and a lot of times people will record, and then we'll walk in and say, hey, come in, just kind of listen to it. It's dry, don't pay any attention. And they'll come in and be extremely happy with what they're hearing. And what we have to tell them is, hey, man, that is what you sounded like. We're not doing anything. We haven't
Right.
touched anything, but you created that vibe. That's how good you guys are. It's tight like that. You came in prepared, and it's been really, really humbling to watch like I talked about the talent, but just the generosity, man. People are so generous with their time. There are many times we're getting into stories where I'm on the other end of it going, we are deep. We're talking about some real personal issues. We're talking about some stuff that it's not surface level things. And
Right.
the vulnerability that comes through sometimes is just, I mean, it's awesome that Brad and I, when it's us on that end, are trusted with that conversation. And then, like you said, when you get those conversations, you tie those lyrics in that song to what we just talked about. It just takes, I think it takes the song even closer to your heart, because you get that struggle through that conversation. You've had these issues, and then you sing the song that they don't even a lot of times know that is written about what they just talked about. I think,
Right.
it's just, I'm
Right.
writing this song, but in the hindsight, if you can really take a step back, it's you're writing a lot of emotion things that maybe it's just a process of how you got through that to get to where you are. And it's awesome, man. It's great to be able to be in the position to kind of be in that seat. So
Yep.
Yep.
So again, be sure to check out Top Hill Recording Podcast. We'll give you again all the social media contact info and where you can see and listen to that later on in the show. So
Kevin, you're going to make me work on my editing skills, man. You're phenomenal with these pop-ups.
oh, well, that's generous. All right, let's talk a little bit more about music, and let's talk about you
All
in
right.
music. Do you remember the first album you ever bought?
Oh, okay. I remember not only the first album, I bought albums in 3, the first 3, but I also remember the first albums that were brought into my house so my dad was always pretty digitally on it. so when like when CD players came out, we had a CD player, we had a Bose system. I mean, he was the dude, which
Wow.
was always awesome for me. And he's not like a bougie guy. He's super simple. But for some reason, when it came to like, we had a computer in the early 90s. I grew up with a computer in my house, maybe even earlier than that. But having, I remember for some reason he came home and he had Michael Jackson Bad album, which is also the first concert I went to.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I also have to tell you, when I was like 6 years old, Michael Jackson Thriller album was huge. I was a gigantic Michael Jackson fan. I had parachute pants. I asked my mom. I asked my mom why she didn't name me Michael Jackson. I mean, things changed as I got older, but I mean, I thought he was the coolest thing ever. So I remember my dad bringing a Michael Jackson album and a Twisted Sister CD. It was the weirdest combo in the history of man. It was like nobody in the house listened to Twisted Sister, but We're Not Gonna Take It was on the album, so it was good. But the first albums that I bought together were Nirvana, Nevermind, Pearl Jam 10, and I think Lenny Kravitz Are You Gonna Go My Way album.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
those were the first three that I spent my own money on. I think I was in like 6th or 7th grade. I just started digging into the guitar. I had the first time I think I picked up, I was probably 5 or 6. It lasted about 15 minutes until I had to like learn terrible Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, and I was done. And then went to piano for a second. Done with that after that. That was too boring. And then later came back to guitar. But that was the time where I was like, had my first little Squire electric, that full setup. And so I got those three and just went deep. I was a huge Pearl Jam nerd for years. Loved Nirvana, but grew up on Michael Jackson. I mean, I love all music, like R&B, rap, especially. Yeah, man, I don't know.
Fantastic.
So Bad, that when did that come out?
That had to have been
87.
80. Yeah, I'm gonna say late 80s, and Michael Jackson Bad at Freedom Hall. I'll never forget that show.
Yeah.
It was amazing,
Wow.
man. I mean, you talk about like going to your first event. It's an event, and then seeing the full deal with the Thriller and coming out in the wolf mask. I mean, it was awesome for that to be my first real concert. It really was spectacular. It was mind-blowing as a kid.
Yep.
Yep.
No, that's so. You started out with some Michael Jackson, and then it then quickly switched over to some grunge in the early 90s. What appealed to you about Nirvana and Pearl Jam?
Perfect age for anger. I was young enough to be angry and dumb, and the drive. It was different. I was never, until I got older. I was never huge on. I hated 80s rock. I hated hair metal. I still hate hair metal. Like, I think it sucks. I will forever think it sucks. And it's, you talked about asking what music I hate. If there's that, I think it's that. Like, I think every rose has its thorns. A stupid song. I think it's
Poison, Rat, your Twisted Sister album. Yeah.
No, they were cool. and maybe that's what it was. I just no, you're right. They were the least cool of all those you just mentioned, I'm sure. But yeah, it never was my thing, and that's probably why I went the other way. And but yeah, man, that was probably just the time where, like I said, I was playing guitar, and I was maybe it was accessibility to what the guitar. I mean, you're talking bar chords. Everything Nirvana did was based around a bar chord of some sort.
Mhm.
So not only did I like it, I could play it, and it
Yeah.
made it. And then, you know, you
Very
look at
cool.
like Alive by Pearl Jam, it's a little bit more intricate. So you got a
Mhm.
run. It's a simple run, but when you're a year into playing guitar, that takes a minute to figure out. How am I going to play it? Am I going to play it on the open E, slide it up? Am I going to play this bar? I know all these bars. I know where this A bar is. Oh, look at this, you know? So I think that's probably a big part of why those were such a staple to begin with, is because I could play all that real easy. So
Yeah. And not that everything's restricted to the 3 albums you listed, but then you've got Lenny Kravitz, which is a very different guitar sound.
yeah. Yeah. And, you know, way more poppy. It has a lot more R&B influence, which I love, you know, just good soul music. So that, and I was already at that point, I liked the Beatles when I was young.
Mhm.
So I liked, dude, what was, I loved, what was Bobby Brown's little band back in the day before Bobby Brown? I mean, even Bobby Brown was good back in the day before he, you know, started dating Whitney Houston. But, but I love music with a good beat. I'm a beat driven listener, I would say. I almost have to force myself to listen to lyrics more, which is weird because I'm, you know, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, not beat stuff. But yeah, man, like a good Stevie Wonder Superstition, I'll take that any day over like anything.
Yeah.
Just give me that nice funk beat and a good, you know, E minor freaking
Yeah.
something or other. Yeah.
So your dad, you talked about your dad being into the technology of it. So was your dad also very big into music?
No, man. You know, I didn't grow up with anybody around me in the house that loved music, but I had huge influences right outside my door. As a matter of fact, one of the guys is still pretty close down the street, and another one's my neighbor. That actually another thing that was weird. So anytime my parents loved having parties, we'd have people over all the time. I'd wake up on, you know, Saturday morning with all my parents' friends in the house, and their kids are still my best friends to this day. Brent West, who's in the podcast, I've known him since we've known each other since we were infants. I mean, for our whole lives, we just have, because our parents hung out and went to college and high school together. So, we would always have guitars in the house on those events. And my neighbor Jeff Donahue, who lives a few houses down the street, whose son's my best friend Lee, he played guitar, and he was one of the most beautiful, unbelievable singers you've ever heard in your life. He has this bluesy, soulful, it's just it's like the biggest comfort food in my life. You know, if I need a lift, I need to listen to Jeff. And then Daryl Ray, who taught me Mary Had a Little Lamb, made me quit guitar because I hated it. He also was a huge influence because he was a player that was always in that circle. And it just so happened, like the time that I was 5, and there was this band called the Broken Arrow Band. That was a huge band in Louisville at that time. They played in front of Sawyer Brown. They played for a bunch of people, and they were here all the time. They were on the hill, because that's where, you know, Top Hill. They were on the hill. They were spending the night playing music, and I can still remember like luau's that we would have in my backyard before it was my backyard, with the band playing next door on the deck that was built with a drum riser on it. It was built as a stage, and it's still over there. So yeah, man, I didn't have influences inside the house, but everywhere around me was music, and I fell into it hard as a kid.
Yeah. Do you remember what made you fall in love with songwriting? Because that, to me, is something that you come across as extremely passionate about, and you're very much into the craft of it in the conversations that we've had. So what was the first thing that made you fall in love with songwriting?
Well, man, I don't know if I even knew what I was doing was songwriting at first, because I played guitar and but I would sit in class in high school and just write poems. It would be more,
Mhm.
I don't nothing lovey-dovey. And that was like the thing. There wasn't a ton of emotional writing. It was more verbiage, trying to figure out uh, how to make things fit. And then I after playing long enough, and when I went to college, I started playing in a band, and I think that was the point where, like, hey, we need some originals, and they all said, hey, you write? And I was like, well, oh yeah, I do write. I do write. I do write. So putting that together and kind of realizing that people didn't hate what I was doing, and even if I didn't love it at times, and I didn't think, because I've always kind of been that guy. It's like, I'll write a song and just once it's out of my head and on paper, and even if I've recorded it on a phone, I don't know if it's ever going anywhere from there, but at least I don't have to deal with it anymore, even if it's a good song, like it doesn't have to be a song that I think sucks. It can be a song that I think, this is pretty decent, but life is just fast sometimes, and you don't think about it anymore. So, but yeah, man, I really became more passionate about it. I think there's a point in time when you start taking things a little bit more seriously, even if you're not a serious person. And I don't consider myself to be real serious all the time. I do what I'm supposed to do. I take care of my family. I got kids, they're taken care of. I go to work. I don't call in. I do the things that I need to do. But I live this life like it's supposed to be lived. It's fun. You get to meet cool people. You get to do. I try not to be just too heavy. So, and I think songwriting for me is a big part of that. Being able to put pen to paper and to have that sense of therapy and do those things, even if it's just a release, and it's helpful. So I think that's when I realized it became important. I got a little bit older, it became a little bit easier, and I realized that it's good for me to put some stuff on paper. And like talking about beat driven earlier, a lot of my stuff comes from just picking on a guitar and going, I really don't know what I just did, but I liked it just then. And so I'll hit record and then kind of come up with something from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. So right now, where do you play? How do you get that part of it out of your system? You're playing right
you
there.
You see it?
Yeah.
So, well, I do a lot of playing with friends here more than anything. I still do a ton of writing, and I'm in the mix of really getting back to it. I've got a ton of stuff to release that you would think that I know somebody that has a studio I could record in, but I mean it's right there. It's just time, man. So
yeah.
To be honest, so I recorded a ton when I was young, moved back here from school, had kids, and I really kind of took a hiatus to raise kids.
Sure.
And I really there was a choice to be made. It was either, do you want to play, do you want to do the bar thing and play music and do that, because it's a grind. When you got babies and stuff like that, you got to make a decision. Do you want to do you want them to have insurance, or do you not want them to have insurance?
Right.
So yeah, man, I'm at the point now where it's time to start releasing some stuff, start recording some stuff, get back out there. I've actually talked to Drew a little bit about, hey, so how's this work these days, man? It's been a minute. But I actually do. Me and Dusty are playing the BA Colonial on September 8th. So
Awesome.
things are kind of going to be picking up. I've got a little private party we're playing this week. So things are, there's some playing going on. My whole goal, man, if I could, it's become also, with the podcast, I do have to say it's become weird for me because it's like there's a built-in platform that I don't want to use. Like I don't want to use my Top Hill Recording to promote myself in any way whatsoever as a musician, not because I think it's I just think that's cheesy. I don't know. I just feel like I record down there, release it on Spotify. I don't need to really do much else. But there's just I don't know, man. It is a weird spot, and that is definitely on me. I probably need some therapy just to figure out if I need to release some music or not. But yeah, I've never really thought, like I said when we talked about the podcast, it really was an accident to kind of start that to get here, because I was always just a musician. Anybody in my life that's known me before this podcast, like, hey, that's Neil. He plays guitar. He's a musician. He sings all the time. Blah blah blah. He has a bunch of songs and originals, and it's kind of there's been two artists that I love. I don't know if anybody thinks of me as a musician, if that makes any sense. I mean, Drew's seen me play, heard some originals, blah blah blah. So he might see it a little different, but I'm never in that space. I'm never in that space. I'm never in the grind that everybody else is in, because I'm in the grind of trying to promote other things that are theirs. The podcast is mine, but the music is theirs. So it's kind of like I said, it finding the balance and the line of what I want to do when I do release these tunes, because there's probably 40 I could release right now that I've never played before, and I've already got enough of those out there, but other tunes anyway. But so I just it's a weird balance to beam to walk. I don't know.
Sure. We're gonna talk offline about places to get you in and get you kick started, but I will just say, man, Neil is prolific. We've done 3 or 4 of these songwriters nights now, and I've never seen you come in with the same notebook. You're just burning through notebooks. Like every time this man has a different notebook, and usually a different guitar than the last time I saw him. So he's putting in the work.
Yeah, I got some guitars. I definitely have some notebooks, dude.
Got a lot of freaking notebooks.
That's hilarious. I've never seen them come in with the same notebook.
True.
Notebooks are cheap. Not coming with the same guitar, that gets a little pricey.
Hey, dude, look, the key is all the notebooks are empty. The guitars are not. But I've done enough stuff in my life to get some guitars. I've been very fortunate, Drew. I do have to tell you, I've been very lucky when it comes to guitars, as far as like all the stuff that I do have. There's maybe a couple that I've really. It's like finding Elmer T. Lee for $40, man. Not many people can do it. I can find guitars really nice prices at like what they should be, or even some of them that were like given to me. It's been crazy.
That's
crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Very good. Was there a particular songwriter or songwriters that made you rethink how you approach that for you? Any like influence types?
Oh man, yeah. There's all right. So to kind of go way back, the first group in my life that I heard that kind of blew my mind, that I was at their stuff a lot, which was Louisville based, was the Glutes. I don't know if you guys heard of or know who the Glutes were, but it was Shannon Lawson. Steve Cooley was on banjo. It was this bluegrass band that was just different. Their originals were different, but they played like Let's Get It On and Mystic. And I mean, they played these tunes that it was just awesome. It was so much fun as a 17-year-old kid to sneak into these bars holding, Shannon's guitar because he's my cousin or my brother, with my real brother with me, and a couple other people, Katie Coomer, who was a huge influence into my writing. Speaking of writing, she was one that really kind of said, "Hey, Neil, you got something here. You really need to keep writing," and gave me my first real writer's notebook. That really was the thing that, talk about songwriting. That was the kick that probably I needed to get me rolling in that direction. But the Glutes, man, listening to the Glutes, and they had an original record and a cover record that came out. One was called Ham Days and one was called something else, and you can't hardly find them anywhere, but they were just awesome. There's a song called Bardstown Road. When I was young, I sang Live Life on the Run. Traveled down life's long road. I paid my dues on Bardstown Road. I mean, it was all about the smoky bars and the neon lights. And I mean, it was so interesting to me to hear a band sing about my hometown, and they're this bluegrass band. I never liked bluegrass in my life, and all of a sudden I like this band, and I really just love them. So they were big. And then there was a phase in my life where I really got into like Dave Matthews syncopated stuff and what he was doing that was just so weird, that kind of got me going in a more rhythmic, different direction as well. So that was a pretty big influence. But I mean, honestly, man, I think if I have the biggest influence that was musically, it would have been the Galoots here when I was in a high school kid. Just to, this, I know this guy, he writes songs. I love this band. But nowadays I'd have to say like Jason Isbell. Jason Isbell blows my mind with, his first first line on his new record is, "Have you ever loved a woman with a death wish, something in her eyes like flipping off a light switch?" I mean, are you kidding me? It's just stupid. And then you go, all right, I gotta start thinking different.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. That new record is unreal. We did a whole conversation on that a couple episodes back, but
yeah,
killer.
So
killer.
I would also say, man, the Beatles were always something that I could go back to lyrically, and they would blow my mind because of their. I think the biggest thing about the Beatles for me that doesn't get talked about is how diverse their catalog is. They sound so different from the beginning to the end, record to record, maybe sometimes one song to the next song. They talk you talk about the great songs and all that stuff, but the diversity that they had on their records were just. I love diversity. I like, somebody having their lane too, but I think when somebody can do a lot of things cool, it might be my, like, I've never been diagnosed with ADD, but I'm sure I have it. Might be my ADD brain going, ooh, squirrel. I like that. Ooh, squirrel. But,
keeps you interested.
It goes back to the whiskey stuff too. I mean, if you like, I love Old Granddad 114. Awesome. But don't just drink Old Granddad 114. I love it too, but there's a huge world out there waiting for you. And it's that way with whiskey, and it's definitely that way with music. And you're talking about a local bluegrass band and the Beatles as songwriting influences, and that's incredible.
It's wild when you think about it that way, but it's very, very true. And you can break a life down like that, as I guess as you can anything. Definitely bourbon and music.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's very true.
Yeah, man, that 114 was awesome.
Goes down quick. Well, I've got a couple more questions. We don't want to keep you too long, but wanted to hear maybe a best or favorite concert, not just the first, but.
All right, I think I've got I've got a couple. All right. I would definitely say I went to Billy Strings at the Ryman, and it was amazing, dude. That was the number part of it was the first concert that I went to at the Ryman. My wife and I went, and we were just like on 11, so we were having a real good time. And then the concert was amazing. It's a legit acoustic church. The room is insane. But that show was awesome. You know, I'd also seen him at Headliners and was about 4 people back, and that was amazing. That was amazing. That was like 2020 in February, and that was February of 2020, which was freezing. But like this was before the craze. This was before
Right.
it was insane going to one of his shows, like Bridgestone or something now.
Yeah.
But
now the guy's cutting records with Willie Nelson and the Grateful Dead. It's crazy.
And
crazy.
He's headlining Bourbon and Beyond on Thursday, the first night of Bourbon and Beyond with Brandy Carlisle, co-headlining. So I mean, yeah, it's so the February 2020 show where you're just standing, as close as I am to this screen, going, I didn't think people could play that fast. What the what's going on up there? Yeah. To that Ryman, the Ryman show was just a different feel. I also saw like 2 weeks after the Billy Strings show, Marcus King at Mercury Ballroom. This is before the record came out that he recorded with your dude from what's the band with 2 people, drummer and a guitar player. Black Keys.
Oh yeah.
Dan
Auerbach.
Dan Auerbach. This is right before he released that record. I went with Spencer Corbin, everybody's guitar luthier and guitar tech in the world.
Oh, best guy
the
ever.
man, his sweetest man in the world. Played with him last night here. Played some music. Me, him, and Brent. Speaking of, and then so we got VIP tickets, right? So we are there, and we get to watch sound check. There's 15 people in the room. This is the craziest show, dude. They were unbelievable. We get to meet him. I still got the signed stuff over here, pictures, and this is literally right before that record breaks. And it was that was one of the most unbelievable shows I'd ever seen. And interestingly enough, right after the Billy Strings concert at the Ryman, Marcus King was coming through. I bought tickets. One of the worst shows I've seen in the last 10 years. At the Ryman. I watched Marcus King at the Ryman after watching him at Mercury Ballroom just like melt my soul with what he was doing. It was like he was at the end of something and he was walking through it. He was like, I'm going to hit every note for you. I'm going to do all the stuff. But the feel was just,
it was off there. Yeah.
It was off. It was weird. It was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a show like we're talking about local musicians, and well, we've all probably been to a show where you're there and not you guys as performers, but as just guys in the crowd. Okay, you're sitting at the bar, and there's somebody up on stage, whether it's by themselves or with their band, and there's 8 people in the whole place, and they're singing their life out.
Yep.
But you go to a huge theater or a arena, and there's somebody there that you've paid too much for the ticket, and they sleepwalk through it.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you've ever. This may be sacrilege, but I don't know if you've ever been to a George Strait concert. But I'd rather take a nap. Like George Strait, I love you. Carrying your way. George Strait's great, but he stood on the stage with his guitar, and he sat there in one spot, and he played every note and sang every song, and it was beautiful. But it was so boring. It was just the most. It was like, oh, he's been doing this for 30 years, and this was 15, 20 years ago. It's just, as much as I love George Strait, it's like I'm gonna do for you what I do in the studio. I'm gonna walk up here, I'm gonna grab this guitar, I'm gonna play these songs somebody else wrote, and I'm gonna sing them, and I'm gonna walk off stage, I'm gonna get my check, and I'm gonna take on off. It just
Oof.
wasn't. It just had no feel to it.
Yep.
It was.
Yep.
Oh, that sucks because I just dropped about $600 to go see him next Saturday.
Well, I want to tell you something.
Good luck.
That's it. That's exactly what you're gonna watch.
Oh man.
He's
Well,
gonna be
Chris
great.
Stapleton's also on the bill, so I'm gonna
Oh,
get some kind of a show.
Well,
you're
okay.
fine.
I'll say this about Chris Stapleton. Saw him in Columbus last year
Mhm.
at playing an arena show, and he was fantastic. The whole show was fantastic. The best part of the show was he had maybe a 3 or 4 song part of the set where it's him
And
playing
acoustic.
guitar.
Mhm.
That arena shrunk to, you know, your local bar.
Mm.
Yep.
And you could tell with the way he sang and the things that he said that part of him would give it all up to go back to being able to sing and play in those types of settings.
Yeah. Yep.
But then, you know, the check clears and you get over it.
Yeah.
But you can tell that there was something about that that whole thing elevated to a level that the rest of the show was not at.
Yeah, man. I watched him last year at Bourbon and Beyond VIP spot, probably 10 people back. He brought tears to my eyes, man. He was unbelievable. It was just
I was at that show too. I think that's probably
magical.
before we knew each other, but man, that was
it's
good. Kevin, I know you're a huge fan of the song. Have you heard his cover of Freebird?
What?
Yes. Well, he did it live at the show I was at. Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It was a really cool moment because I mean, almost not to the very end is any other player there, and it's just him and that jazz master that he plays, and
I
so
bet
good.
that's awesome. I'm gonna have to listen to that.
Yeah, I'll text it to you later. There's a YouTube link. Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Well, I've only got one more question for you. I don't know if Kevin has any more, but what is a band or an artist that you consider criminally underrated? Like if you could just say, hey, here's a hidden gem. Everybody go listen to this person that you may or may not know. Whether that's somebody you met on the podcast or someone you've been a fan of or whatever.
Oh man, geez, that's a wild one. Can I say a few?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll say a few for different reasons. Like I would say the band in the last year that's come through the studio and blew my mind that I thought more people probably need to know these guys. Bedford is phenomenal. I don't know if you guys heard of them. They're in the very, very same vein as like Mojo Thunder, very Southern rock. I don't know what the situation is now. I know one of their guitar players has left the band, so I don't know if it's a 3-piece or if they're looking for the 4th piece now. But when they came through, man, inside that studio, it was energetic. And to be honest with you, maybe not the best lyrics, maybe not the best songs that we've had, but as far as like just energy level and creating something, Bedford was phenomenal. As far as also criminally underrated, man, I had like I had like 6 people when you said that. I also agree that like Dusty is criminally underrated. I think he's also criminally taken advantage of that, how good he is and how nice he is with his time and ability. And that includes us. He's been a co-host for me many times, and I'm sure that there's many things that he could do with his time that would be better for him. But talk about a dude that also promotes the hell out of other people. Yes. And is always telling you about the next person. Sarah Jean Kelly, he mentioned her. He mentioned Luke Powers. I mean, people that are just phenomenal. Luke Powers is criminally underrated. Nick
Yes.
Dittmer is criminally underrated.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that guy.
Criminally underrated.
Scott Smith.
Scott Smith is criminally underrated, but he's also beloved. Hopefully, he's rolling. I don't know if enough. I think it's going to change, but not enough people know who Ellie Ruth is by herself because she's just phenomenal.
Yeah, she's great.
Drew, honestly, man, I think you're underrated. I think not enough people know your original stuff, and I think you're a hell of a songwriter.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I think the Louisville music scene is criminally underrated. I think that they think that Nashville is the place to be, and I'm telling you, they got good players, but they don't have the heart. They don't have what's going on here. They don't have this like I can't put my finger on it vibe. That's what it is. It's like I don't know what's going to happen, but it's like the back in the 70s, early 70s with the bluegrass revolution that took place in Lexington, Kentucky with Tony Rice and Ricky Skaggs and J.D. Crowe and all those guys. It wasn't even what it is until now, and people look back and go, "Holy shit!" And sorry, I don't know if it's you can edit that.
You're all right.
Yeah,
You're all right.
Or I think when people look back in the next 10 years or so, they're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, look at what really came out of Louisville music." I think it's going to be huge. I really do. I think the Louisville music scene is criminally underrated.
Yeah. We have some friends that we've had on the show. They do a podcast called All Things Blues and Southern Rock. And I keep sending them bands and they're like, okay, what is it with Kentucky bands? What is it with Kentucky? There are so many fantastic bands in Kentucky that are flying under the radar. What in the world's going on? And it's true.
Yeah, it is. And just to kind of change it up, because I thought while you were saying that, I was thinking of like 3 other people. We had some groups on recently, like Sear Wilson and Live Action. I don't know how many people know who they are, but they're phenomenal, dude. They're so different, way more like rhythmic. Just it's so good. And there's so many people, man. I really just think that looking back in the next little bit, you're going to look at the Dusty Bows of the scene and the Kiana and the Sun Kings and all these people that make their own ways that when you look at where the originating spot was, it's going to be here. So, Hot Brown Smackdown. God, man.
Yeah.
Talk about another band was another concert that blew my mind when they played Waterfront Wednesday. There was no need to watch another band. It was unbelievable.
They were the stars of that night for sure.
I left. I did. I really did. I thought,
you didn't miss anything worth seeing.
There's nothing else that's going to top what I just saw. Let's go home. And we did. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, they're great. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for putting people on. I think that is one thing that, drew me to you and Dusty and the rest of that crew over at the Monarch is there's none of that scarcity mindset. Like, if I tell people to listen to someone else, there's not going to be enough time for me. I mean, we sit in a room and write songs with each other and crafting things together and resharing each other's posts and hyping each other up. And that I think is something so special and unique to what's going on in Louisville as a whole, but then also that group at the Monarch specifically. So
yeah, man,
it's very cool to see and be a part of.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for having me. Number one, I really, really do appreciate it. And I couldn't agree with you more. That's kind of what makes this scene so nice is the generosity and the genuineness that people throw out right on their sleeve. I did tell my co-host Brad one time, I thought it took me like meeting Dusty 2 or 3 times before I was like, is he really this nice?
Yep.
But that's the thing. Then you meet, you guys and other people in the process, and you go, I think it might be everybody, because if you have that mentality that there's room for all of us. Let's prop each other up. Let's not.
Mhm.
It's not a feast or famine thing. We can all eat. We're all broke. We're all paying for it. We're not. I mean, how much money are we making here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Neil, before we let you go, be sure to tell everybody where they can find you and Top Hill Recording Podcast.
Yeah, I would say the biggest place for us on the socials is Top Hill Recording Podcast on Instagram. Brad Weston, my co-host, runs all of that stuff. So if you send any messages or anything, he will be the guy. You can probably just look up Neil Johnstone Music or Neil Johnstone on for mine. It'll have I'm sure it'll have a Top Hill logo on it, so it'd be pretty easy to find on Instagram. But I'd also say please follow us on YouTube if you can. That is where we're trying to get as many views on those podcasts as possible. So YouTube would be great too.
Yep. And this is very crude looking, but this is off of Dusty's
There you go.
Facebook.
Hey,
98 BA Colonial. We're gonna have
I'll be
Neil
there
with Dusty, and so that'll be a lot of fun. Holy cow,
dude! This on the fly editing is blowing my mind.
All right, I got. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh seeing Eric Clapton that night, or I'd be there.
Hey man, Eric Clapton or me and Dusty. It's 51-49, but I understand.
It's close. It's close. Drew, where can people find you, buddy?
Awesome. Yeah. I'm on Instagram at drew.crawley63. That is the most up-to-date thing. But the website is drewcrawleymusic.com. It's a great way to kind of keep track of dates. We're getting ready to do a quick little run through West Virginia. Got a couple of Cincinnati dates coming up, and then we'll do the normal circuit of dive bars in Louisville. So see you guys out there.
Awesome. As for the show, you can watch this on YouTube. So check that out. Subscribe to the channel. Last couple shows we've had some really good comments from people that have watched it. So feel free to comment and let us know what you think. If you just want to listen to the show on your way to work or on your way to school or on your way to grandmother's house over the river and through the woods, whatever the case may be, if you just want to listen, you can do so on your favorite podcast platform, as long as it's Apple, Spotify, or Google. We also have a Facebook page where we post all of our shows. We have a Facebook group that is growing a little bit at a time every week. We have, people are just saying, hey, this is what I'm listening to right now. And it may be something that you've never heard of before. Maybe something you haven't heard in a while, and remind you, hey, that was pretty good. I need to listen to that again. People also say, hey, this is what I'm drinking while I'm listening to it. I'll post quite a bit about deck pours and what I'm listening to and this old granddad 114 that I'm drinking. So we have a good time with that. And, again, blending the love of whiskey with the love of music. So once again, thank you, Neil, for joining us. Thank you for the work that you do supporting local music. It is vitally important, and
you as well, man. You guys as well. Really.
Well, thank you very much. And on behalf of Neil, Andrew, and myself, until next time, thank you for watching, and cheers, love, and free bird.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Hey, excellent, guys.
Good night.